This is a clip from Beyond Classified. You can access the entire episode now at rockfin.com/FKN+. Especially in which you consider the truth or conspiratorial community, people get so stuck in certain beliefs, and it's so detrimental to them at times, especially when you see what's happening with a lot of the, secret space program, a lot of these people who are coming out and with these extraordinary claims, and then it turns out that they're false, or they were, put up to it, or it's not the true information. I think this is happening on a very large scale and intentionally probably to this community, so we don't have open conversations like we're having.
Well, what absolutely. I mean, again, what you have is a system to demoralize people, and you have a lot of dates being bandied around. Something significant is going to happen on the 14th of October or the 15th of November, and it never happens. And what does that do? It drags people back into the false matrix because they're demoralized. What you have, how I would liken it, is a hotel, and in that hotel there's obviously multiple rooms. In one room you have the UFO community, in one room you have religions, in one room you have the truth group movement, and so on and so on and so on. But they're closing the door on their own individual rooms, believing that only their room is the truth, only their room exists. But there's a room next to them, there's a room opposite them, there's a room above them, and they're doing the exact same thing. Now all it takes is for them to open the door and recognize that they're all talking about the same thing. And if they could remove the cloak of ego, the cloak of I am always right, then they would see that religion is really talking about the same thing, the UFO community is talking about the same thing, the truth movement are talking about the same thing, but in a superficial way. And all it takes, instead of concentrating on what is separating the individual groups, which is part of the false matrix, discuss what unifies them all. Then they can move forward. The truth. What is the truth? Well, light is associated with truth because light exposes things for what it is. You see it for what it is because of light. So that is why truth is associated with the light. But truth really is seeing things for what they really are. And when I've spoken to UFO conferences, they only seem to, a lot of them, not all of course, but a lot of them only seem to be interested in the tin can, metal can in the sky phenomenon. They're not interested in the spiritual side. They're not interested in why they're here. When I talk about the Anunnaki and the Anunnaki story, and I go into a little bit more detail as to what it is telling us, you make yourself an enemy because you're saying things that places they don't want to go. In the same way, if I speak to religious people, it is the same thing. If I speak to truth people and say, all of these emblems that you're saying is satanic and this, that, and the other, you do realize that this has been deliberately given to you as a false emblem. So it will take you off the actual path of truth. You need to look at what these emblems really mean originally, what these words mean originally, because unless you have the spiritual maturity to become adult, you will never reach adeptship.
I love it, man.
You think you've got the truth, but you've only got one level of truth.
Now, since you mentioned the Anunnaki, I would love to get your perspective on who these beings actually were and their relationship to humanity. I've had just tons of different, a myriad of different ideas of who or what these beings were, if they're human, if they're extraterrestrial, if they're just advanced us from the past. What do you think?
They are personifications of the planets. They're not a race of beings. When you look at the sacred science is really observation. And from that observation, you get data. And that then formulates scientific theory. The first thing to ever be observed by man were the stars. So astronomy and astrology are the sacred science, the original science. Now, if you imagine that many thousands of years ago, you were a pharaoh or a high priest, and you can go to your people and say, in July, the Nile will flood and you will have the water for your crops. In September, your crops will die and the waters of the Nile will recede. On December, you are going to see this star in conjunction with this star, and that will have this effect on the earth. And everything that you say as a prophecy comes true. Now, you are seen as a god because you can prophesize the future. But what you're doing in effect is reading the celestial narrative. What you are doing is learning the movement of the stars and the impact that the stars are having on the earth plane. So what they did is they began to personify the different planets. And these personifications became your Anunnaki characters, the same as many characters in other civilizations as well. Now, when you look at this rogue planet Nibiru, Nibiru is not a planet, it is the Ark of Heaven. And what you have is the boat of Khufu in the Great Pyramid represents what Charon on the river Styx in Greek mythology represents. He ferries the souls across the waters. But in the Egyptian myth or astronomy, that boat goes across the celestial waters, which is in the region of Sirius and Orion. So these souls, enlightened souls, are ferried across the celestial waters. So when you look at the arc in Egyptian, it means circle or to encircle. So it is the heavens, the circle of the heavens, or the dome, the half circle, the arc. That is Noah's Ark. That is where Atlantis is, the celestial waters, which is mimicked by the Nile. Now, in Sumerian, 3600 is how they wrote or drew a large circle. 3600 is the orbit of Nibiru.
Yeah.
It is not a race. It is not a rogue planet. It is the Ark of Heaven. It is a personification of the planets. And the giants, as I've already said, giant means big stone. You see all around the world big stones in monoliths, in pyramids. People are being fooled. People are misinterpreting.
Do you think that this is intentional, or do we just have amnesia after a series of cataclysms, or were we hijacked at some point?
Well, again, it's if you have an underlying theme where in the likes of the modern day, you have the Scarlet Council. Now, who they are, were basically priesthoods. And when you look at all the cardinals walking around the Vatican in scarlet, they are the Scarlet Council. Now, they go back a long way because they destroyed ancient knowledge so that no one will be able to get in touch or find the ancient wisdom that would allow them to become adepts. So what you have is a lot of this knowledge that's been hidden or destroyed. So you're basically destroying the chance for people to come behind and find this sacred knowledge. The whole of this world, the whole of this system is geared to stop people from finding this knowledge. So when you have the likes of Zechariah Sitchin, who has come along and has taken these Sumerian scrolls and he said, I interpret it as this, and then that becomes an accepted historical fact when it isn't. Yeah. And you get somebody that says, here is the King James version of the Bible that was authorized by the Church of Rome. This is historical fact. It's not. They all contain hidden, sacred, advanced ancient knowledge. But we are not seeing that. We are seeing a superficial story. Mm-hmm. We are seeing a wooden ark that Noah built. The ark is in the heaven. We are looking at the 7 islands of Atlantis that the New Age go mad about the sinking of Atlantis. The sinking of Atlantis is in the celestial waters, not on Earth. You have the precession of the equinox, which is 25,920 years. During that precession of the equinox, the great year, there will be 7 different pole stars, different changes of pole stars. That is the 7 islands of Atlantis. Now, when one pole star changes, it is submerged into the celestial waters. Now, after the seventh pole star has been passed as part of this procession, those are the seven submersions of the seven islands of Atlantis, which is the island of Atlas. Now, in Greek mythology, Atlas holds up the heavens. So it is astronomy. It is the celestial waters. The ancients looked up at the sky, and the blue sky to them was water, which was reflected on the earth. So that is your Noah's Ark. That is your Atlantis. That is your Nibiru. And the planets are personified into these gods because they saw the planets as gods.